Welcome into the Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and today we are talking about dog joring, which for people who are unfamiliar with the word, joring, it's pretty much like dog sledding. And today we invite two special guests into the podcast to talk about their journey from Northern Europe, coming to Canada, and now training dogs and their owners on this really interesting activity. It was a really cool conversation and an interesting journey for our guests, how they got here and how they're kind of turned this into a passion, into a business, which was really, really interesting. But first, as always, please give us a like, comment, subscribe on whatever platform you are watching or listening to, as it allows us to continue to grow this podcast and allows us to attract our great sponsors like today's sponsor, North Bay Toyota. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota. Attention truck lovers, have you been Tundra struck? The powerful and dependable Toyota Tundra is the new definition of grit. Ask us about amazing lease deals on a 2025 Tundra Double Cap SR 4-wheel drive and experience ingenious levels of capability, technology, and refinement. Or maybe you're an SUV lover? Take advantage of a limited shipment of 2025 RAV4s and discover the perfect blend of style, comfort, and efficiency in a compact SUV that ignites your desire to explore. Right now, get excellent lease deals on the Toyota RAV4 LE all-wheel drive and more. It's time to Toyota at North Bay Toyota, 640 McEwen, or online at NorthBayEcho.ca for details. Today we have a first on the podcast, as we are joined in studio by two guests, one human and one furry. As we'd like to thank Kaja Kodalak for coming in from Northbound Huskies alongside her Husky North, who decided to sit down as soon as I said that. But we got a little chair for her, so she'll be in the shot if you're watching this on video.
It's good to have Kaja and North in the studio, Ben, for a whole bunch of reasons, particularly because this is kind of a Backroads theme story. I ran into her at Sammy de Champlain Provincial Park, literally, and then by happenstance, very next day, I think it was, she was doing a session with Ontario Provincial Park superintendents and other management types about the possibility of skijoring. And I know, Ben, you don't know what that word means, so we're going to get this defined pretty quick. And canicross and bike joring, and we'll talk all about that. And so it's this is kind of like a Northern Ontario new activity. It's been around all places in the world for a long, long time. But welcome. Tell us first of all about skijoring.
Hi, thank you for having me. And so skijoring is basically cross-country skiing with dog power. So you have your regular cross-country gear, but then you also have a belt that you wear. Your dog wears a pulling harness, and you're connected by a bungee. And then you work together as a team. You're skiing while the dog is pulling you.
You know, we got to talk about your journey here because you're from Switzerland. Give us the fast forward version from leaving Switzerland, ending up north, and then coming to Nipissing Village near North Bay.
All right. So after college, I decided to go to Canada for a bit of an adventure, learn some English. And because I've always been into dogs and worked with dogs in some capacity, I wanted to learn about dog sledding because to me that was a very Canadian thing to do. Every Canadian does that, obviously. So I got the opportunity to go out to Panorama, BC and help my now friend Aaron Peck. He was running tours out there in the mountains, and he was also training his Iditarod team for the Iditarod that year. So I got to help with the tours, and I got to go on training runs with his Iditarod team, which was really, really awesome. And I was hooked instantly, like being outside all day, the dog's excitement, it was incredible. I also met my husband there, and we went back and forth a little bit between Switzerland and Canada until I decided this is it, selling everything, moving to Canada. Shortly after that, my husband got offered work up in Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, and we moved up there. And that was like prime mushing country up there. I quickly got to know some mushers, got to run their dogs. got my own Huskies, and then that's kind of all where it snowballed from.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's quite a journey when you think about. Then, of course, your husband got a job at Water Bomber and moved down this way to be closer, and you found a ideal place near Nipissing Village. And I don't want to say the rest is history, but the first time I met you, it was all about nature, and it could have been talking to actually another episode we just taped today was about forest bathing, but for you it was all about nature. But just tell us about your love to nature. That must have started back in Switzerland as well.
Yeah, I mean, my mom had horses, so I grew up with horses, definitely always spent a lot of time outside. And I just grew up with the mentality that we go outside every day, no matter what, and we move our bodies. And when you have animals like horses, they have certain things they need. They need to go out, they need to get trained, they need to go on trail rides. Dogs need exercise, and so it was just a no-brainer. Like, you kind of do it for your animals in the first place, but really it's also for yourself. And I'm just a happy person when I get to be outside and the fresh air. To me, it's just the most natural thing to do.
Yeah, no, it's all about that word nature and natural. And earlier in the conversation, you say how you got hooked on this, and you are really hooked on this, to be sure, because you started the business, Northbound Huskies. And tell us a bit about that.
Well, it started with just me sharing a little bit what I do with my kids, with the dogs, as the family, and then people got motivated by that but didn't know how to start. So I started showing people how you can get started, and then the next thing was, oh, where do I get now the gear? And then that can be very overwhelming. So I started bringing gear in so people can try it on, test it out, learn about the differences, and then just kind of help them along, because it can be very intimidating starting a new activity and going outside just on trails and, wilderness, not knowing where to go, how to do it. So I just try to help people with that journey. And then eventually they can do it on their own too. And a lot of people still like to just do it as a group, which is fine too, as long as we go outside.
Yeah. Now there's canicross and bike joring. Tell us a little bit about that.
So canicross is walking, running, hiking with your dog, same thing attached to you, just like the Skijoring. So you're also wearing a belt, the dog wears a harness, and you're connected by a bungee. The bungee just kind of makes it feel more comfortable. It absorbs the shock, and you don't feel like you're getting dragged. And it's a great off-season activity. So when there's no snow and you can't ski or use a sled, you can canicross, because you can do that anywhere, everywhere. And it's just a great way for you and your dog to stay in shape and have something that you both enjoy as a team and do together. And then the bike touring is a little bit faster, and it involves a bike, and the dog basically pulls the bike. And that one is great, again, to get in shape. Like, we get, a lot of people get in shape for summer, like bikini season, but we get in shape for winter, so we can go longer and farther. So we train the dogs once the summer heat is over. With the fall weather, it's cooling down. That's what the Huskies like. The cooler it is, the better. And then we can start training them, getting them back in shape. So once we have the first snowfall, we already have a bit of a head start.
Yeah, I was amazed when you were at Saint-Louis-de-Champlain Provincial Park. I want the listeners and viewers to know a little bit about skijoring, because there was the kick sled and the skis. And although probably I guess there would be one other addition with the harness attached to the kick sled, it's pretty similar but different.
Yeah, so the kick sled is basically a mini dog sled. So it comes basically from rushing, but not everyone has a full dog team. So the kick sled is a smaller sled. It's lighter. It's easier for just one or two dogs to pull it. And then you don't need the big team. And for that, you need the sled, and then it has lines on it. And then the dog, again, wears a harness to comfortably pull in. And then the Skijoring is great if you're already a skier. Much easier to start Skijoring if you already have some basic knowledge of skiing. But the kick sled is something anyone can pick up, so you don't have to be a skier, which is nice.
Now,
yeah.
Do you have to use a Husky? Like,
No.
is that so? Maybe because I feel like there's obviously a. Some people might think, oh, you have to use a Husky because that's the classic dog.
Yeah.
What other dogs can you? So what other dogs would you say maybe a good breed for that?
Working type of dogs definitely like these activities, it comes more natural to them. They like having a job. But I've had corgis, doodles, boxers, any type of breed.
Corgis? Those things are small.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
But then like something like Canicross, you don't need a big, strong dog because you're helping out too. Same with Skijoring. You're so involved. With a sled, it helps if the dog has a little bit more strength, but even then you can help out. And it's not about winning the Iditarod or any sprint races, right? It's just about you and the dog going out and staying active and whatever that means for you. And I always say, start slow. Like, do 500 meters, then go to a kilometer. Like, we don't have to do these crazy long distances and crazy speeds, and every dog is different. But that's also how it started for me. So I very much worked with Huskies first. Like, I got introduced to dog sledding, and they used Huskies bred for these activities. But when I was up north, I was working for a doggy day camp center, and we had a lot of dogs there that didn't fit into the program because they were not the social butterflies. They didn't like the big groups. They had reactivity issues. So I started bringing those dogs with me on my lunch break, and I took them out and just included them in our activities. And I was blown away how much they enjoyed it. And then it helped with their behavior because it was a great outlet for them. They could burn energy, and they were around my Huskies, but my Huskies didn't care so much for them because they're like, okay, we're on a mission. We're doing a job. We're being focused. So those dogs could just run along without having that pressure that, we have to be playing and be super social. So they socialized in a different way just by working with my dogs. And that was a really nice way for them to build social skills over time too.
Yeah, no, I really like the comments you've made, about the mutual benefit and, of course, being out in nature all the time. To me, and of course, for the first time I saw it, wow, first of all, I thought, I have to do a story about this, which I've done, and get you on the podcast, which we're here today. But, Ben, it's just a whole pile of fun when you look at it. And, you can see that mutual benefit. And I looked up the statistic, 39% of people in Canada, there's a dog in their household.
Well, we were literally talking about this, right, earlier today, because I was asking if you ever had dogs, because we were talking about, like, Stuart, who's our office dog, and I think I was hearing him kind of whine a little bit.
Yeah.
He knows that North is here. And he's an interesting guy, because I always have to kick him out of the studio when we record, because he'll come in and he'll be like, I want to be around people, and then halfway through the recording, he'll be like, I don't want to be in here anymore. So he always finds his way into the studio every time we record, and I have to keep kicking him out. So I have to be the bad guy. But yeah, like that's the one thing, and we were talking about those that you said you never owned a dog, like yourself. I know your daughter owns one, but I'm surprised now that we're in this conversation to know that you haven't owned one for this activity.
Grew up with dogs, and then of course when we lived off the grid with family, we chose not to have a dog just because we wanted the bears and the wolves and all the animals to come, because dogs are guard dogs and they'll chase them away. So. But since Allie's had a dog, and Allie's going to hook up with Kaja to get some lessons and to make Sunny do the things to get better trained, so to speak. Because the harnesses, Ben, they're so simple. Like and there's a quick release, and again, if you had a kick sled or the bike, you can do all these things. And I was amazed. She went out and purchased some equipment, really reasonable, and of course. You're dealing with Kaja, who is a wealth of knowledge. And I think, again, this has been going on in many, many places for a long time. But we don't see a lot of it yet in Northern Ontario. So, and then again, when you look at the winter and then the other 3 seasons, why wouldn't you be doing this? I can see myself doing it. And maybe I'll take Sunny out on a trail. I can be doing that for sure.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know if this is a stereotype or not, but isn't it a big thing for Indigenous people with... like using like dogs and sledding and that kind of stuff? Is that not, or is that just a stereotype that you see in kind of like media?
No, like that was their way of like for trapping. They used dog teams. They would run the dogs along the trap lines and to get to places. And now more and more the dog teams get replaced by snow machines. So sadly, you don't see many big teams anymore. And it's also like a cost thing, right? But back in the day, I mean, that's how you got medication to small communities, and that's how people got around for sure.
But even when you say cost, though, isn't it? Well, I guess if you put the cost of an animal over, like, don't you think it'd be cheaper because you just have to buy the equipment and it's not like gas and insurance and everything.
A snow machine, you use it in the winter. It costs you in gas in the winter, but in the summer, it just sits in the garage.
That's
where
true,
a dog still needs to be fed and exercised all year round.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I think it's just cooler to have a dog.
Oh, 100%.
Following around.
Well, this is
Yeah.
a good segue, the family dog, so to speak, but tell us how important it's been to your family, your two children, and you tell us about some of their feats of magic doing headstands and things, which when I first saw that, I thought, well, you can, once you learn how to do this, you can do anything. It's not much different than doing yoga anywhere.
Yeah. So the tricks, that was something that kind of started... they just started that. And they say they saw me do a handstand once, and now thinking back, I think I did do that, but I mean, not as perfectly as they do it. I have a friend, a musher up there, he's in his 70s and he still runs a dog team. And he was doing like all sorts of tricks in the younger days. And I tried to do a handstand once. You don't want to see it. But my kids, I mean, they started kick sledding when they were 4. And before that, they got pulled by the dogs on a GT. And I just tried to include them from day one. I mean, I was pregnant doing all these activities with them. And once they were born, I just brought them along. And every winter, I had to be creative again and figure out how to keep them warm, how to keep it fun for them. But like, it was just... I solo parent a lot too, and it's like, okay, how do I get the dogs exercised? How do I fulfill my needs, go outside and, move my body? And how do I get the kids out? And I do truly find the kids are happier if they spend time outside. So every year, I did it differently and tried to include the kids, and then it just became normal to them. And living up north, -30, -40, I never told the kids it's too cold. We just said, okay, today we have to use this type of gear, and today we might use the hand warmers. But we never said it's too cold. We might spend a bit less time outside, but they don't always notice the difference. But we just went out every day, and it's fun for them because they build a connection with the dogs, and, they build a bond, and then they become more independent, ride their own sled, and then they're so comfortable that they start doing tricks, and then that became a thing. Yeah.
Sports aren't just what we do, they're who we are. Source for Sports North Bay is your advocate, your local support system, and your biggest fan. 1321 Fisher Street has grown from a place where knowledgeable experts can help you find exactly the gear you need, to the hotbed of team uniforms, apparel and fanwear, to a community stronghold for all the things that truly matter to you and your family's sports journey. We love helping you find your first pair of skates, as much as we relish supporting local leagues, teams, and athletes. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way.
You have to be a dog trainer, right? You have to have some sort of ability to be able to train dogs and get them to do what you need them to do. And I was just kind of curious along that vein, how, I guess, that would differ from, I would say, a traditional dog trainer or somebody that's dealing with maybe a lot of behavioral stuff. Do you find like there's a big difference in the way you have to train your animals versus maybe, Joe down the street goes and has to domesticate or I guess the question's getting kind of messy, but you kind of know what I mean, right?
I mean, it is and it isn't. It's just I'm training them something different than maybe the person down the road is. But at the end of the day, it all kind of comes together too. Like my dogs, we very much focus on the harness activities and those type of sports. But I also train them to walk nicely on a leash and show good manners and not jump up on people and things like that. And I find when we fulfill a need, with like a husky, they need to pull. That's what they're bred for. They need a lot of exercise. If we fulfill that need, then it's also easier to train them other things. And some people that do these sports, they do all sorts of different things. So in the winter, they focus on skijoring and kick sledding. But then in the off seasons, those dogs are like incredible in hunting or obedience training or frisbee sports. Like there's so many different things those dogs do. So you really don't have to focus just on the one activity. and making a difference in gear and commands, it really goes a long ways, and then you can fulfill even more needs and have more fun with your dog.
Yeah, so the obedience part is built in, so to speak. So what do people need to think about when they're watching this or listening? What should they say, yeah, that sounds kind of neat? Because I know my daughter said that, this sounds kind of neat, I want to do that, and the connection was made. Well, what should people be thinking about? Because Ben, the earlier question, small dogs, most dogs like to pull. So, and that's what I learned from Kaja. So, what should we be thinking about this if you want to try this?
I do think it's helpful if you get in touch with someone who has experience with these activities, for sure, because if you just Google it or YouTube it, there's a lot of key points you're missing along the way. And also every dog is different. So I really like to have those one-on-one lessons and go out and see how the dog responds. What are the dog's weaknesses and strengths? And then the approach is different. Because you can't treat a dog that's already naturally pulling hard the same way than a dog who's more insecure and doesn't want to pull as hard, maybe. And also the background of the dog is maybe different. Maybe you've been teaching your dog for the last 5 years not to pull and walk next to you. So now we're teaching our dog, no, it's okay to pull and be in front of me. And there's some steps involved to get to that point. And with some dogs, there's more steps, and with others, you can skip a bunch of steps. But I do see a lot of common mistakes sometimes when people start on their own, and then it's harder to untrain that versus just starting in a way that, if you get help at the beginning and just start off right and then slowly build up from there versus unlearning a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, no, again, it was kind of like it's a little different than just walking your dog.
It's a little bit different, and then once you kind of get a feel for it and you have the right gear, that's another thing. You can go on Amazon and buy gear, but then you're like, oh, this is like really uncomfortable because you're not using the right gear, or the gear doesn't work, or it falls apart, and all these things, right? And that's something I had to learn too, because when I got into these activities, I didn't even know there was a term for it. I just, I got a Husky puppy, and I was like, okay, I'm going to train my dog to walk in harness, not knowing that that's called canicross. And at the time, I had a rock climbing belt and a regular leash and a regular harness. And then over time, I'm like, oh, there's better belts, so I'm more comfortable. I'm not hurting when I come back. And my dog might need a different harness for this activity. And this dog needs a different harness because it's built differently. And there's all these things, and the more you dive into it, it's such a big world, and when you go online, it's overwhelming. And also, like, you go on one side, one brand, you might like their harness, but you might not like the belt. And that's where I come in, because I'm a distributor for various brands, and I have everything laid out when you come for a lesson, and you can try the different belts. Does this work for my body type? Does that make sense for the dog I have? Because also the gear I use, the belt is one brand, the bungee is a different brand, and the harness for the dog is a different brand again. And if I have to send people home with like, okay, so you order your belt here, you order the bungee over there, they spend so much money on shipping and lose so much time, and it's overwhelming. I don't want that. I want to make it easy so they keep doing it.
Yeah, that's why we try the shoes on before we buy them, Ben.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious about, because there's got to be competitions, right? There's got to be like things that, because it's good to do it as an activity, but if there's something that you can strive towards, so maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the competitions. And I don't know if you're personally involved in any of these. I'm sure you are, but
there is races, and I would like to see more races and events happening here. Also for the non-competitive, there's some people that are super competitive, and they travel to the US and they travel all over Canada. When I was up north, there was not much going on there. There weren't really events, and if we would have stayed longer, I would have liked to start organizing events, because like you say, it's nice to have a goal and set a goal and work towards that, and then join a group of people who all do it, expose our dogs to something new, come home with cool photos. I myself, I'm not like a super competitive person. I just do enjoy it on a daily basis outside in the bush. But I have been going to the Carney dog sled races. So this was our second year, because we just moved to Ontario, and it's just the best weekend of the year. Like being around people who have the same mindset, the same energy, and the love for the dogs, and then meeting different people, checking out their setup, because again, everyone does it different and has different gear, and we can learn so much from each other. And that's another thing. Like somebody asked me once, well, how many lessons do I need to like learn this? When am I done? I'm like, we're never done. I've been doing this for so many years, and every dog is teaching me something new, every person, and then the environment is different. There's so much to learn, and then there's new gear on the market, and that's also the fun about it, right? Where it doesn't get boring. But yeah, back to your question about competitive, and so there are races. There's not a lot of races in Ontario, and again, I would like to see more. For a lot of it, you have to like drive south, which, it's a commitment, and not everyone can spend driving 3 hours to do a 10-minute run and then drive 3 hours home. So I would like to see more in our area, and just kind of grow it and get more people into it.
Yeah, and this is a little not like super dark, but I was just thinking about one of the things, because these are living animals, right? There's a time limit, right? And like just dealing with having losing someone, like losing a pet, and then trying to keep going and stuff. And I don't know if you've dealt with that, or if or how people do that, because it creates a bond between you and the animal, and you get so used to that, and then to have another animal and have that same bond, it can be really tough, right? I was just curious, I guess just maybe some advice or anything that you can talk about.
Oh, I mean, it never gets any easier. I've had lots of dogs, and I've usually have multiple dogs at once, but losing one, it never gets easier. And, we lose them for different reasons. Sometimes we lose them way too young. That is definitely the worst part about it all. But, I mean, if you think about all the years you built memories with them and all the years you did have fun with them, I would not have a dog just because you're worried about losing them. I mean, it's part of it, for sure. And it's horrible, it's sad, but it's still worth it. And for me, because I always have multiple dogs, when I lose one, I mean, it is awful every time. And, you go through a lot of emotions. But because I still have dogs at home, I'm not falling out of that routine. I'm still getting up because I have to take care of those dogs, and it keeps me going. It helps me keep going. Then if you have just one dog and you lose that one dog, I think you fall into a much darker hole, and you fall out of that routine, and then it might be harder to start it up again. So a lot of mushers and people that are into these sports, once one dog starts to age out of it, that's when they get some fresh blood, and then they have a nice transition too, so they can keep doing these activities without not having the dog for it. What
is the age usually range? Because it's like kind of the same thing with horses. I know we talked to a lady who did horse racing on to North Bay with Love, and it was kind of like that too, where it's like they get to a certain age where it's like, I think it was 20 or something like that for horses. So I was just curious with, like, for Huskies, let's say, generally.
It depends on the dog. It really depends on the dog. So Huskies that are bred for mushing, they start in harness as early as like 6-7 months. Wow. But we're not racing with them at that point. We're just introducing them to the activity. We go really slow and do short distances just to get them used to it and keep it fun and positive. And then you slowly add a little bit more. And there's different criteria for races, and every race is a little bit different on the criteria they have. And then when it's too old, I mean, for racing at the Carney race, I mean, there was lots of 9-year-old dogs. My dog was 10. But I'm also not doing the long distances. He was doing a shorter race. And again, we're not super competitive. I'm not going to push him too hard either, because that is something those dogs, they're not always very honest. They like to go, they want to go, and they don't tell you when they're sore. So you really have to be in tune with your dog. And if your dog doesn't look right, then don't go, don't do it. And I think if you're a very competitive person, that might be a bit harder to do. And the dog tells you when it's starting to get enough if you're really watching and listening. And then you just slowly ease them out of it. And you might not use them for the, my older dog, I'm probably not going to use him for the races next year because I don't want him to push himself too hard. But we can still enjoy it at home and just gradually ease him out of it as long as he's having fun.
Yeah.
I was fascinated when I first saw you in the park, as I said earlier, because I thought, again, this is a lot of fun. Seems like it's kind of easy to do with some training and the right equipment. And then I thought about, you can teach an old dog new tricks. But that might be a good way to end. But is there something we missed that you want to tell the listeners and viewers about this?
Well, teaching a dog old tricks, I had a 6-year-old Husky come yesterday and never done that before. And it's like, it's finally time, 6 years old. And you don't have to start them as a puppy. I mean, if you have a puppy and you want to get into these things, the earlier you teach them things, the better for sure. But if your dog is already a little bit older, you can still start. And again, we don't have to do long, fast runs. We just do what's right for the dog. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. What can you and your dog do? And then do what you can right now and build up from there. And if you become a faster runner because you're motivated to keep up with your dog, yay. But if you're just happy to do a 2-kilometer jog or walk, then that's great too. It's really about getting outside and building a relationship with your dog.
Well, namaste to you and North. And North is having a nice nap here as we fade away.
I was trying to keep her in frame, but it's not going to happen.
No.
She's just going to be chilling. So, Bill, when are we going to see this program at the Ecology Center?
Well, I have talked to Kaja about this, and we have to have further talks because of I always say the 3 seasons plus winter, you can be doing this canicross and the bike joring. Mm-hmm. And so, we want to do something, and we want to have, this introductory exposure kind of program awareness, and then she can take it away from that. What's the next step? Well, obviously, equipment, doing this, doing that, the training. So, we want to do that. And I'm looking forward to working, the Canadian Ecology Center is looking forward to working with her. And she's going to be out at the park tomorrow,
nice.
Having some fun in another different way, but with the dogs. So we'll have her back maybe next winter for an update.
Well, we have one of our coworkers has a Corgi, so maybe
there you go.
Maybe they can come out. So that would be actually really neat to bring, because as you said, you can't ever be too old. Well, I'm sure there's a limit, but for the most part, like it would be, I think, a cool activity to do. I actually, my buddy's parents do that with their Husky. I think it's the same thing. They use a sled, so I'm assuming it's the same. Well,
I have a kick sled, and I've had a personal injury, and I'm looking forward to trying it with Sunny. Even if I just go 100 meters or 10 meters, I'll just get the feel of it because it's just one of those things you want to do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Well, big thank you to Kaja for coming on alongside North, who didn't want to cooperate with the camera as she slept most of the time, and the chair was a little bit too low for the table. But, other than that, great chat. And, of course, don't forget to check out her website, northboundhuskies.com. A link will be in the description as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find more episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast on all of your favorite podcast players and the video version on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. New episodes drop every Wednesday morning, and this podcast, alongside other local North Bay podcasts, can be found at NorthBayEcho.ca. Also, check out our newsletter, Echo Essentials, to keep up to date with what's going on in the Echo network. Of course, it's free to sign up, and it also comes out every Wednesday morning. So that does it for us this week, but join us again next week for another Backroads adventure.